Are you one of those people that's been trying and doing relatively okay with growing alocasias, and you're looking for your next kind of plant to graduate towards and just go, ooh, can I care for that? Have I got a really interesting alocasia for you today? Stick around with me and let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplanttygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, today I thought let's have a look at an alocasia that is definitely kind of not for beginners necessarily. I know there's going to be people in the comments going, I'm a beginner and I've done this and it's done well. Congratulations, you are doing better than a lot of very experienced plant people, at least from what I'm seeing online and generally from comments that have been thrust in my direction about this plant. So without further ado, and the title will have it, so I'm not exactly telling something that's surprising, the Alocasia Jacklyn. And mine is a relatively small specimen. There's a couple of extra little growths at the bottom. But I'm going to get to the point of its size relatively quickly. But yes, this is an alocasia that looks very dissimilar to a lot of other alocasias. But before I start rambling on, let's move into the first section. So background on the Alocasia Jacklyn. So this is a plant that's interesting. It had a lot of controversial history to it. So I had seen some of these flying around for a bit. Then we did the talk that I did with Jane Perrone for her On the Ledge podcast a while back now. But we talked about plant trends that for new plants that really aren't new plants, they've been around for a while. We're just rediscovering them now. So this was one of the plants that was discussed. I don't know if this was one of those plants that got rediscovered, but I know we kind of veered into the topic of this one because this was a plant, and the name might be the issue here as well. There's a lot of controversy around this, whether or not it was a species and it should have been given a botanical name. Jacklyn, I think, was based on the name of the person that first got it into their nursery. Did they get this plant into their nursery from slightly dubious ways, i.e. like plant poaching, and again more on kind of plant poaching and the terminology and whether or not we should be using that word on a video that I did with Fraser, and I will link it at the top there. Fraser is a researcher out in the field who started off as a houseplant enthusiast like the rest of us, and he's got so many interesting insights about what he's seeing out in the field. I'll put it at the top there. It's a long interview video, but well worth it if you're kind of interested in a bit more finding out about where some of the plants come from originally and how they come to us originally. So yes, a lot of controversy around this plant, and it was one that because of that as well, and there wasn't that many around, it was very expensive. Again, I'll touch on availability later on, but I was able to get my hands on one originally. Didn't do too well. This is the second one, and it's still alive in my care. So that's a bit more of the background on this plant. Now coming into speed of growth on this one, and let's just say that, is it the fastest alocasia I've ever grown? No. Is it also the slowest alocasia I've ever grown? Probably also no. Ironically enough, I think the Alocasia Black Velvet, if I'm not mistaken, is probably still got the award for the slowest alocasia I have ever grown. So this isn't far behind, but also small size. So yeah, it's not the fastest thing, and I'll give you the benchmark that I usually do, and anybody that knows I'm already doing plant care by taking off some of the dried cataphyls, because this is the only time that I can do these things, or I've got a plant in front of me and I'm holding it for long enough that I'm just like, ooh, I should probably do this now. Sorry, apologies. This is a plant, so giving you a context in terms of speed of growth for this one. If a golden pothos in this space, because I'll make it relevant to the space that I am growing in, grows 2 to 3 new leaves on every singular stem, that one growth point that a golden pothos will have in my space during the growing season. That gives you a decent benchmark. Most people understand kind of the speed of growth of a golden pothos. This might grow a leaf within that period. So not the fastest, also not the slowest. Does this do 0 during the winter? Yes, it does 0 during the winter, and it's usually at its most vulnerable during the winter as well. I find that this plant can be a bit temperamental with its watering, even more so in the winter, because it's just that I need water at just the right time, otherwise I'm going to die. And if you don't give me water fast enough, I'm also going to die because I've been dry for too long. Winter dormancy kind of thing. And this is more of a plant that I've experienced a more traditional type kind of Alocasia dormancy, even in my care, because a lot of the times most of my Alocasias don't really go into dormancy as in like going back down to the tuber, but they might stop growing more actively. This one, yeah. But yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say about speed of growth. Now, ease of propagation on this one, as with most Alocasias, and I will bring it in so you can kind of see, there is a little growth point there. There's a little bulblet here and there's a little bulblet here. Very similar to how most Alocasias get propagated, is essentially they'll kind of grow little tubers all the way around. Usually, sometimes there's a little kind of point where it attaches to the mother bulb or the mother tuber, and that's where you get other kind of baby Alocasia Jacklyns. Now, what you can do a lot of the times with those is either leave them in the pot and you get a much bushier plant because you've got multiple plantlets in the same pot. For anybody looking, this is a one plant, regardless of whether or not there's multiple points that is coming out of the ground from, which in the case of Alocasias is multiple little Alocasias and usually the mother Alocasia. Or you can kind of remove them, put them in their own pots, and then you've got another Alocasia Jacklyn. It's relatively straightforward with the Alocasias. It is one of those things that, again, I don't think a lot of people mention recently. This was something that we used to say a while back, and I think if you're starting off, this is something worth noting. This isn't a plant that you can take a cutting from, generally speaking, to then propagate the same way that you would maybe a philodendron, a monstera, something like that, and then it will just kind of grow roots and do that. And I said it's not generally, if you've got an Alocasia that has got a large enough tuber, and sometimes that tuber comes out from outside of the soil, and you've got kind of something that looks like a very thick, barky stem, but it does look like the topmost bit of a dry potato, sometimes you might see some advantageous roots that might be around there. You can, and I have done it successfully, it's not the fastest thing in the world, you can then take a cutting, let that callus over, the top bit will become a new kind of Alocasia. If you can get multiple cuttings with multiple little kind of nodes on it, you can then propagate those usually in a prop box until the roots start coming out, and then you could get another growth point on there as well. It is not the easiest or fastest way of propagating any form of Alocasia, so generally speaking, if you could go with the corms, it is better. Does that involve you unpotting your Alocasia and messing around a bit with the roots in order to get those out? Yes. So it's something for you to remember, but other than that, I mean, this is an Alocasia, it's an Alocasia, it's an Alocasia, it's an Alocasia. It will propagate the same way that all other Alocasias would do. Now, brace myself for the availability of this plant. Yes, as I kind of hinted off at the very beginning of the video, this is a plant that was not cheap. As in, this was definitely an Alocasia that at some point was in the triple digits, 100%. Was it ever mid triple digits? I don't know if at the very, very height of it, it was in the mid triple digits in some places. This was not a cheap allocation. I'm going back a few years now. Did I pay anywhere near that money for this plant? No. That's what I was talking about, or kind of alluding to in the beginning of the video, is that I waited until the price came down considerably before I went and bought this plant. And when it did, I bought this plant. I bought the first plant, which did not survive in my care, and then I bought the second one, which was even cheaper, and it was much more established. When I bought this plant, it was 3 or 4 times the size that it is now. I will get to that in accessories and care. But yeah, and it was a plant that was just a lot of money. And anybody who has ever grown an alocasia, and I know there's a lot of people that are struggling, and this is part of the reason why I'm saying this is maybe one that you graduate to and you don't use it as your first plant, or even your second or your third alocasia. The care for this one can be a bit challenging, at least in my experience, and again from what I'm seeing online, as well as a lot of other people's experiences. I think Claire from the Jungle Haven has grown this relatively successfully. I do need to chat to her next time I see her and just go, what in the heck are you doing with your plant? Can I do the same? Because you're surviving and you're thriving and mine is this. But yeah, this isn't a plant that is cheap. Would I have been salty to get such an expensive plant only to realize that it was quite as difficult as it is to grow? Yes. Now the other thing that I don't know whether or not it's going to come up on camera, if I can get it to focus on the leaf and not me, can you see that it's got slight fuzziness to the leaves? And that is not something that you see very often, and it's almost, when I say fuzzy, a lot of the time people just like, oh, it's nice and bettable. No, this feels a bit like stubble. It's that kind of fuzzy. It's really, really odd for an alocasia. And this was something that we were talking about with Jane Perrone on her channel, on the Ledge podcast. And that was something that I tried with my first one and possibly a bit with this one. And then realized, you know what, no. Which was that because this potentially comes from slightly drier areas in its natural habitat, it doesn't need quite as much water as other alocasias would. Do I agree with that? Yes, but with a very heavy pinch of salt with that, because I was letting this fully dry out before I'd be watering it, which I know a lot of people were doing, because again, is what I was talking about before. If you water it a bit too much like you would a regular alocasia, it will just rot like that, which other alocasias wouldn't. But then if you let it dry too much, it's just a bit like, oh, no, I'm also going to die and crisp up now because I am parched. So I'm just like, and I know that some people, and I remember seeing this on Sydney Plant Guy's Instagram, and I think even he was saying that he saw this from something else, and I think that was for the Alocasia Frydek, the variegated Miscalitiana, the true Frydek, that he was growing his in a closed vessel with moss and then leca at the bottom, and it kind of wicked up. And I think he had great success. I don't know if I saw a video recently where that kind of went sideways again. I don't know. So I'm wondering whether or not that would work with something like this. Maybe. But again, that to me means that that plant needs an awful lot of moisture. And this one really does not like that much moisture. So if you've had a good success with the Alocasia Jacklyn, please do let us all know down below. And by good success, I will quantify that. You may have gotten a small plant and you've managed to get it to size up greatly without any real issues, or you got a bigger plant, which, because again I was saying on the availability of this bit that I'm talking about now, the prices have come down considerably. Have you got a more established plant and have kept it at the same time size, or even grown it without it kind of going to this patheticness here? Do let someone know down below. I'm very curious. Very curious to see what your care is and what you're kind of doing that I might be doing differently. Very, very curious. Now, pests with this one. Remember the stubble that I was talking about before on that leaf and the undersides? This is an interesting one because I don't think I have ever had spider mites on this plant, which again might make a bit more sense because of the way that these leaves are, and they can They do feel a bit prehistoric. I get what the fascination is. Do I still think this plant is very pretty? Yes. But because of those leaves and because of that kind of really rough stubble, this is an alocasia that, at least in my experience, has never had spider mites. Not a one time. Not this plant, not the previous plant either. At any stage of their lives, not once did they have spider mites for me. I am sure there's going to be people in the comments going, oh, mine did. Please do let us all know. No, I might have just been lucky with both of mine. But maybe it's something to do with the foliage. I will hasten to say that out of all of my alocasias that have ever had any form of maybe tiny few bits of mealybugs, this one here is a mealybug magnet. And I kind of get it because this almost feels like it could, it's not the same. So Philodendron verrucosum, which can be very, very kind of almost, the fuzziness is almost kind of velvety and it gives it a bit of a sheen. This isn't quite the same feeling at all. But because this is kind of similar vibes, the verrucosum was, and this should tell you something, that was the original plant that I brought into this conservatory when I first moved into this house that had mealybugs that I had not realized and has since infected my entire collection. It's either that verrucosum or a Ficus umbellata or Everest. I can't remember which one of the two I had. Both of those had mealybugs. They are what I class as my patient zero. They caused all of this like problems and so many mealybugs. The reality is, would I eventually have got it from another plant? Probably yes. But I like to blame those two plants. Neither one of those two plants is still in my collection. But yeah, mealybugs on this. Thrips, no. Thrips, no. Spider mites, no. Whitefly, no. So yeah, mealybugs really on this. And generally speaking, I think if you've got it in a space where you don't have mealybugs, this might be an okay plant generally. But let's come into accessories and care. I've got a few choice words to say with this because I've grown this in different things. So this is at the moment in, I think, yes, in my Anthurium soil mix, not my Anthurium, but Soil Ninja's Anthurium and Orchid soil mix, and it's doing well. I had it in slightly denser soil, which is probably a bit more adept for alocasias. Did it do okay? Yeah, not so much. That's what I'm talking about, the moisture situations. And this happened with both my plants, not just this one. So that's something to bear in mind. I would say give this something that holds onto some of the moisture. Do not put this in something like just straight up orchid bark. It needs a bit more moisture around its roots than that. But also do not put this, at least in my experience, in a standard houseplant potting mix or even something else that has kept a lot of your other alocasias happy. This probably won't be. It will be a bit too wet for it. Because again, I do agree with what we were talking about with Jane Perrone, that this is slightly on the drier side. And I think the optimum word is there, slightly, rather than it needs to almost be treated like a succulent. This is not a succulent, it's still an alocasia. Dum-dum over here, this is not a succulent. But yeah, so you need to give it some of that. Do again let us know if you've ever grown these in closed vessels and you've had success. I'd be very curious. Did I grow this in semi-hydro? I think I may have tried this in pond, and it did okay. It didn't live its best life. I'm thinking that first one might have been in semi-hydro. It's okay. I've always struggled a bit with semi-hydro with alocasia, and I know a lot of people have great success with it. I think a lot of people grow it in leca, which I have never had good success with, so maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. But yeah, in that respect, keep in mind the soil. This is one that you might see that kind of almost looks like it could be bleaching on the leaves. This needs, so generally I would say for most of my alocasias, bright indirect light is their jam. This is bright indirect light towards medium light, and that's where it kind of did its best things for me. But yeah, keeping on top of the mealybugs, as I was just kind of mentioning, is going to be one of the things that you're going to want to do with this plant, generally speaking. That watering balance you're going to have to figure out on your own, because I think everybody's conditions are going to make it slightly different. So with me, I can maybe push it a bit more on the drier side because it's so humid in here. but I think if this was growing in a household condition which was drier, I probably wouldn't be able to push it quite as much. So those are the things I'm going to say. The thing that I was mentioning earlier on about that kind of dormancy, again, my experience, this didn't do very much and it actually rotted down to the corms. And this, if you would have seen this about a month ago, it was still a corm. And it was the last ditch attempt. I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to leave you in a pot. I'm going to water you relatively infrequently until I start seeing roots, which I did. And then see, if you survive, you survive. Otherwise, in the summer, come summer, and you haven't activated, you are going in the compost bin. I have obviously managed to kill the second one. So yeah, but it did come back. It's 2 extra bits I was not expecting. I got the one thing, ooh. So possibly. But yeah, it's one that you need to kind of really baby. And that's why I'm saying this to me is more of an advanced care alocasia. So earn your stripes first. As I said, I'm sure there's going to be people down in the comments going, I've grown this and I've got no experience. Saying that, I had a friend of mine who had visited it up in Manchester this time last year actually. And she was growing this in her kitchen. She's got no experience blood. She's like, I've killed nearly everything. She really had. But this one was somehow surviving. Was it living its best life, even by her own admission? No. But it was surviving, so I could tell you something, I guess. But let's come into my final thoughts with this plant, and I'm curious whether or not you've all figured out where this section of the video is going to go. So I'll start like I usually do, which is knowing what I know now. If I did not own this plant, would I purchase this plant? That's an emphatic no. No. I got the second one because the first one I'm just like, I killed it off so quickly and I'm just like, no. I will not be beaten. Let's see if I can do this a second time around. The glossiness, the kind of dreamy, I look at this cool plant, had kind of already started tarnishing from the death of the first one. So I'm just a bit like, So, yeah, no. Hard pass. Because don't get me wrong, it's got those really interesting petioles as well, but very similar vibes to this. Again, not the easiest of plants, and I'm also wondering whether or not that plant, because I don't think we know the lineage of that. That's a hybrid, or I think it's a hybrid or a cultivar, I can't remember now. The Alocasia brancifolia, or pink dragon, or maybe it isn't a hybrid, if it's given I don't know. Pink dragon or something like that. It's got very similar kind of stems. It's got some of that speckling. It's got slightly pinker stems. It's got those splits. That looks a bit more palm-esque. Still not the easiest alocasia to grow, but a damn sight easier than this. Damn sight easier than this, and faster than this as well. So absolutely not. I want to like this plant, but for how much drama this has caused me and a lot of other people, I keep saying this, but I've talked to so many people, they're just like, yeah, no, we tried. It's a hard no from us. So I'll be curious to see if this video finds a lot of people that have had great success with this, which is great. Do let us all know what you're doing. But yeah, so that's the first bit. In terms of a score, 0 or 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, where would I rank this? A 2 or a 1? For me, there are better, easier houseplants out there rather than this plant, if that makes sense. And as I said, I've not killed it entirely. I've managed to get it to grow back. And does it have some saving graces? Yes. I mean, the leaves are quite interesting. It doesn't look like a typical alocasia. That kind of stubbliness is probably nice for some people. Those petioles that have that kind of almost leopard, zebra printy kind of thing, kind of cool. It's just not the easiest thing to care for. And this is interesting because it's another one of those examples where it's just like, it's an alocasia, give it alocasia care. I'm just like, but do you just lump all alocasias into the same care, or do some things like this, or maybe the dragon scale, or maybe the Alocasia brancifolia need much more exacting instructions as to how to keep it happy? Because again, it's to do with where the natural habitat is. Yes, a lot of the other alocasias might come from similar habitats, so one size does fit all when it comes to care instructions. But some of these that are maybe outliers that do not fit into that neat kind of habitat that most of the rest of them do, they need different care instructions. And I think for me, it was just a case that I didn't find the care instructions, and I still don't think there's an awful lot on successful care for this plant available out there to the masses. So yeah, for me, it's a hard pass. So a 2, a 1 or a 2, it's okay. But for this level of drama and histrionics and kind of dropping all of its leaves and not being super comfortable with this, but maybe a tiny bit like this, not worth it. Not worth, I mean, look at the patheticness. So yeah, that was on that positive note. I know you all appreciate my negative reviews as much as you appreciate my positive reviews. And I try to keep it real as much as I possibly can on this channel. I am not going to sugarcoat things, which is why I'm not an influencer and I'm more of a content creator. Because if I'm one of you, and when I'm consuming content like this, I want to know the truth. I don't want to just be sold a plant. So, again, my experiences. Mileage might vary, like they say. So your experiences might be different than mine, but from my point of view, hard pass. Hard pass. So yes. Do let me know what you think down below. I think I've asked you to give me a few things on this video, so I'm not going to ask you to do any more. Thank you for watching as usual. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.